and welcome to Roundtable. Poland likes being in the club but doesn't like some of the rules. The club in question being the European Union. And the rules in question concern which has supremacy, EU law or Polish law. Well, with Poland's constitutional court stating that the country's own laws have precedence, there is a showdown with some suggesting Poland could be heading for Polexit. Not quite the same as Brexit, so in this programme we'll explain why and what it all means for the future of the European Union. Good to have your company. I'm David Foster. It is not the same as Brexit because it would just be a legal opt-out. But the European Union says that's impossible and may well hold back money, a lot of it. Poland, on the other hand, has the power to block EU reforms. And so the two sides are facing off with potentially far-reaching consequences. Poland's Constitutional Tribunal ruled that parts of European Union law were incompatible with the Polish constitution, and that undermined a key legal pillar of the European Union, the rule of law. The European Commission has warned that it will use all its powers against Poland. Poland's Prime Minister said the rule of law was as important for Warsaw as for the other 26 member countries.
Wiele tutaj mówiono o znaczeniu praworządności.
Much has been said about the primacy of law. Rule of law is as important for Warsaw as it is for other capitals, and that's not just a matter of the treaties, that's also a principle enshrined in our constitution. We do not have differences of opinion. The difference lies in whether the rule of law is being used as a pretext to demand things of member states which are not in the treaties.
Można żądać od państw członkowskich.
Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, asked Poland to reverse controversial judicial reforms, a precondition for it receiving help to recover from the coronavirus pandemic. And Poland is still waiting for $65 billion from Brussels as its share of the EU's $865 billion post-COVID stimulus package. So why is Poland fighting the supremacy of the European Union's courts? Well, time to pick this apart to get some expert advice. We go first to Ghent in Belgium. There we see Peter van Elsuwege, Professor of EU Law at Ghent University. Then to Amsterdam in the Netherlands. Barbara Grabowska Moroz is there. She's a research fellow at CEU Democracy Institute. And then to Warsaw, Poland, and we see Kamil Jaronczyk, managing editor at Visegrad Insight, which takes a close look, a close interest in what's happening in Eastern European EU member countries. Great to have you all with us. I'm going to begin with something that's happened fairly recently. We have the President of the European Parliament, David Sassoli, very influential figure, saying he's so fed up with what the European Commission is doing, i.e. not taking any action against Poland, that he's going to take it to court. This is what he had to say. EU states that violate the rule of law should not receive EU funds. We have a mechanism for this, but the EU Commission's failing to use it. I've therefore asked our services to prepare a lawsuit against the Commission to ensure that rules are enforced. Peter, you first of all, since you're a legal man, any chance of this succeeding? And it also seems to me a little bit like the left leg suing the right leg. You can't manage that well without one or the other.
Yes, well, I think this is in the first place an instrument used by European Parliament to put some pressure on the European Commission. European Parliament for a long time insists that European Commission would trigger the new financial conditionality mechanism, which formally entered into force at the beginning of this year. But as you might know, Poland and Hungary started the legal action against this new financial conditionality mechanism before the Court of Justice, and the European Commission had made a commitment during the European Council meeting in December that it would not trigger this new financial conditionality mechanism as long as the Court of Justice had not given its final ruling on the validity of this new mechanism.
Okay.
The European Parliament actually does not want the European Commission to wait any longer, particularly in light of what happened with the Polish Constitutional Tribunal ruling from last week. So this is, I would say, part of this broader bargain amongst the institutions, the pressure from the European Parliament on the Commission, which now threatens to trigger this failure to action against the Commission by bringing the Commission before the Court of Justice. I mean, of course, the procedure will also take some time. In the meantime, I assume that the pending case regarding the validity of the financial conditionality mechanism, it will also continue.
So we have to leave it there because it's obviously a very long process. We can't go into every little twist and turn of it. And Barbara, did I see you signalling that you wanted to add something along the same lines?
I mean, I fully agree with what was already presented, but I think the Commission is not the only actor in the room. There is also the Council, meaning other member states who have also powers to react what is happening with the rule of law in Poland. And the whole so-called Article 7 procedure started in December 2017. So we are already having 4-year dialogue about what is happening in Poland, and basically nothing was decided. So it's not the only Commission who can make some valid decisions, but this is also up to member states, and apparently they are not really interested in it.
Okay, I don't want to go too much into the mechanisms by which this may or may not be resolved. It's basically, for me, it's rather black and white. It either will or it won't. Poland will either be punished or it won't. And the Commission will either have to back down or it won't. But I want to read this out to you. This is from Luxembourg's Foreign Minister, Jean Asselborn. He says, Europe will not digest the end of the rule of law. In other words, not put up with it in the slightest. Europe will die from such a development. Europe has been built on democracy, liberty, respect, and the rule of law. Kamil, I'll come to you in just a moment, but Barbara, comment on those thoughts, if you would.
I think we are facing the moment in the history of the EU when the statement which you have just already presented to us is being put into question, and the question is whether it's really only about theory or whether it's actually about facts and practice. And it depends on all institutions in the EU to decide whether it's really something binding. Commission, Parliament, but also member states to check whether the rule of law, democracy, and other values are still binding in member states.
Will Europe die unless it abides by the rule of law, which in the case of the European Union and Poland are two entirely different things? Will it die if what he says comes true?
I mean, I think it will then turn back to what was in the 1950s, the idea that this is just an economic cooperation and nothing more. In 1990s, it was already a political decision. We want to go a step further. We want to make a political cooperation under the EU. If those values are not binding, then I think we're getting back.
Right. Okay.
Back
So Kamil, now we have to explore whether this is something that Poland wants. It wants the money, it wants the economic benefits that come with being a member of the European Union, but doesn't want any of the restrictions when it comes to its own liberties. Would Poland be quite happy with that?
I think that here we have to make a distinction between Poland and the government. Of course, Poland has currently a sort of an alt-conservative government, which is playing these games, is trying to play a game with the judicial branch in Poland. Trying to control judges here. We saw this with the disciplinary chamber. We saw this with the prosecutor. This is just trying to get the cake and eat it too. We live in a union with the Copenhagen Agreement.
So do you think this is just a short-term blip?
I personally can't see this going on for too long because the entire country is based off of the European Union. Our economy is dependent on the free movement of goods. Currently, it's going on much longer than it was supposed to because of the Article 7 needing unanimity for going on forward. And It just happened that Poland has such a government at the same time as Hungary. But time is ticking, and the Hungarians are going to have their election in 2022. And if the Hungarian election doesn't turn out toward the opposition, then there's going to be the Polish election in 2023. And it just takes one government to change for there to most likely be a possibility to negotiate unanimity, which would lead to heavy sanctions, which would affect the population. And if the population are not getting benefits from the government, then they will decide at the ballot box against them.
Okay, well, let's assume that the status quo remains, that we are left with alt-right, as you described them, governments in both Poland and Hungary for the foreseeable future. Peter, would Poland or Hungary...
Alt-conservative.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, not right. All conservative, beg pardon. Would any of those countries have the ability to stymie European Union progress? In other words, be able to sort of use that as a lever against any sanctions that might be put on them?
I would agree that this kind of debate that we currently have about fundamental problems regarding the rule of law in countries such as Poland and Hungary cannot last for a very long time, because it has an impact on the functioning of the European Union. I mean, there are a lot of challenges in front of us. I mean, think about tackling climate change, I mean, economic recovery after the pandemic and so on. Now, these internal discussions and problems regarding the rule of law in countries such as Poland and Hungary risk to paralyze the union to a certain extent. So a lot will depend upon the domestic evolutions in both countries, but I don't think that the other member states, I mean, can continue like this. I mean, or will allow that those two countries and maybe a few others will paralyze the entire functioning of the European Union.
But how can they prevent that?
Well, to a certain extent, of course, we'll have the access to EU funding, and maybe also the application of basic rules of European Union law. I mean, the entire system of the European Union is based on a number of assumptions. One of the crucial assumptions is that there is mutual trust among the member states and mutual trust in the judicial system of the member states. I mean, if this assumption is no longer valid, then the consequence is that certain areas of European cooperation will no longer be possible.
It could fragment, and I would say to you, I'll come back to you on this one, because I'm going to get to Barbara in just a moment, that trust obviously has to be a two-way street. And while the European Union may say that it can't really trust Poland at the moment and therefore has to slap sanctions or fines on it, Poland is saying by this, actually, we don't trust the European Union. And neither side might feel the need to budge. Barbara, you were raising your hand as if you wanted to add something.
No, I mean, I fully agree that now the picture is becoming very much complicated. You know, this relations between the EU institutions and Poland, but there is also, again, other member states who also need to trust to Poland and to Polish institutions if they want to cooperate, for instance, between the courts in criminal cases and civil cases, etc. So it might happen that the Polish government would like to, as a reaction to a possible suspension of funds, to block or at least make the work of the council being more complicated. But at the same time, they cannot forget that they have to be also open and being able to cooperate with other member states, with other courts. So this picture is very much complicated. It's not only limited to Brussels.
Kamil, yeah, I will come. I see you raising your hand like a very polite young man. Thank you very much indeed for that. But I want to say it's become, if you like, Barbara, a Mexican standoff, hasn't it? It's two people, two countries or institutions, 2 feet apart, both with loaded guns pointing at each other. Nobody's going to win in that situation.
And they all believe, especially the Polish member of this situation, they all believe they're going to survive, as nothing is going to happen to them. And I think it's too much optimism.
Kamil, sorry, you carry on.
Yes, I just wanted to continue with these courts, because I completely agree that it does. The Polish situation does lead to problems with the functioning of the courts. throughout the entirety of the European Union. I'd like to mention the European arrest warrants, which actually has been an issue. It's the right for one member state to extradite to another member state without any mention of a ministry or anything. It's more of just a bureaucratic procedure. But there were issues in Ireland and in other member states with Polish criminals who were wanted in Poland, basically not being allowed to be extradited outside of their country because the judges didn't trust the Polish judiciary for being impartial enough to carry out the proper sanctions. So this was an issue for a long time, and it can only grow if the EU doesn't. So
the EU as a whole, let me try and summarize this in my head, and out loud. So the EU was saying, sorry, we don't trust the Polish courts to be able to deal with this independently. Therefore, we will not send these people, this person from Ireland to another EU country, even though the law said that they should do that.
This was taken to the court, and the European Court actually decided that it is up to the judge himself to decide. As the judges of Ireland, as the judges of Poland officially are EU judges at the same time, it was basically given to Ireland to decide if they want to extradite to Poland or not to. So
well, therefore, there is no trust at pretty much any level.
Yes, it was actually brought to the ECJ by this local Irish, relatively lower-level Irish court. Well, first to the Irish Court of Justice and then to the ECJ. Okay. And it's up to every member state, and there is no trust, and this is definitely not going to help build it.
Peter or Barbara, is there any way out of this where both sides can say they've saved face?
Obviously, it won't be easy if you hear, for instance, the Polish Prime Minister in the European Parliament earlier this week. I mean, that wasn't really a message which tried to create a way out of it in the short term. I mean, the only way out, of course, is that there are some evolutions in Poland, particularly with respect to guarantees for the independence of the judiciary. So changes with respect to the disciplinary chambers, which is one of the crucial aspects regarding the problems on judicial independence, is, in my view, crucial. But of course, the question will be to what extent there will be substantive rather than artificial changes. So this will stay with us for a while. I don't think there will be a short-term solution. I mean, a lot will depend upon domestic evolutions in Poland. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, I think.
Let's play in this little clip from Ursula von der Leyen, European Commission President.
The European Commission is, at the moment, carefully assessing this judgment. But I can already tell you today, I am deeply concerned. This ruling calls into question the foundations of the European Union. It is a direct challenge to the unity of the European legal order.
Peter, questions the foundations of the European Union. How much will it shake those very foundations?
Yeah, I think Ursula von der Leyen is completely right on this. I mean, if you read the judgment or the ruling of the Polish Constitutional Tribunal, this concerns the references to Article 1 of the Treaty on European Union, Article 19 on the Treaty on European Union, which are quite crucial. It is about the acceptance of the role of the Court of Justice of the European Union in providing an interpretation of the EU treaties, and in particularly in providing an interpretation of the requirements regarding judicial independence in EU member states. I mean, that is, let's say, the crux of the matter. I mean, will our Polish courts and tribunals, do they satisfy the guarantees for independence as defined within the European Union? Now, without without those guarantees, it is simply very difficult to to apply all the other parts of European Union law, because, as I mentioned before, the entire system, the entire EU legal order is based upon this basic assumption. The basic assumption is that we have independent courts in all member states. If this is not guaranteed, then, I mean, the effective application of European Union law in all areas is at stake.
Okay,
So
can I just move on to Barbara? Sorry about that. But I just want to ask you this one. Would it be fair to assume that it's always going to be somebody acting for a populist reason? In other words, to bolster their popularity at home, that they would like to do this, have this kind of confrontation? Or is it sometimes something that people have a proper concern, which goes back a long way, with the supremacy of the European Union's courts? So there is a real problem there.
I mean, I think the Law and Justice government will have this logic of popular support as the main one to decide about, what to do with the courts in the future. But I don't really think that their current position is really required by their voters. Meaning, for instance, the disciplinary chamber. I don't think this is necessary for them to win the elections if they want to leave this court to still.
Sure. You can say that they're doing it for their own reasons, but I suppose what I'm trying to find out is, if you dig deep enough, do you find similar concerns elsewhere within the European Union about the fact that the European Union's courts are too powerful, too keen to impose their thoughts, their laws on smaller countries?
I think partially this is something, what can you read from this Constitutional Tribunal ruling? The tribunal says we don't like those rulings because they are ultra-virus, meaning the Court of Justice tries to decide about judiciary, and this is not your power. This is not within the.
But other countries too, or just a few?
And this is interesting because the Polish tribunal actually refers to the German ruling, to the Danish one, and using those foreign rulings, they're trying to protect Polish sovereignty. I think this is quite interesting way of defending something which seems to be Polish by using other foreign rulings. But there was no case among EU member states was so initiated by the government. Most of those cases were ruled, in fact, against the government decisions dealing with the EU law. Here we have something which the government really wants to get, meaning the ruling which would sort of support the reasoning that they will not follow the Court of Justice.
Kamil, you look at Eastern European countries, but I mean, I suppose you're an observer of the entire EU bloc as well. Would you say there is disquiet in other countries that has not yet come to the surface, as it has done in Poland, as it has done in Hungary? In other words, do you think there does need to be a fundamental reform of the way the European Union actually sets up its legal supremacy?
When I look at especially other countries in Central Eastern Europe, which we know, what we don't mention sometimes is that Hungary actually, at least the government of Hungary, actually backed the ruling. And Janez Janša, who is the prime minister currently of Slovenia, also gave verbal support to the Polish ruling. These countries are also known as currently as troublemakers within the EU. I find that countries usually, when they are in compliance with the treaties, or at least in compliance with democratic, with the generally understood democratic way of governing, usually have, even if they do have issues, they have ways to redress it with the Commission, with good faith, with trust. But these countries currently are doing it in a way that is very theatrical.
Okay, so perhaps you would be suggesting that they're using this as a deflection, if you like, to blame somebody other than themselves for whatever might be going on, rather than the fact that there are genuine misgivings. I'll get that quick one from Kamil, if I may. And Peter, we've only got about a minute and a half left, so Kamil, if you'd be quick on that.
Yeah, I would like to just say that when it comes to deflections, I would find it actually just more of a fallout, that they want to consolidate power within Poland.
Okay.
They look very inward, and this is just a thorn in their side from a place that they didn't expect it really.
Peter, you'll have to be quick, very quick, sorry.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I think, what is at stake is that countries like Poland and Hungary want to change the nature of the union. And the current nature of the union is based upon the principle of supremacy of EU law, which is a guarantee for the equal treatment of all member states and citizens, and goes back to the very old case law of the Court of Justice. So it's nothing new. And the open challenge and open conflict by the Polish Constitutional Tribunal, a court which, does not satisfy the requirements of independence, is a kind of attack to these fundamental principles.
Okay, now I'm sorry, I've got to stop you there. If that was quick, well, I wouldn't like to see it when you're talking for a long time. Peter, thank you very much indeed. Barbara, Kamil, we appreciate your thoughts and your expertise. From me, David Foster, and the Roundtable team, we thank you for watching. Hope to have you with us on another occasion. Until then, bye-bye.